Welcome back to our news bulletin. We start from Brazil, where the death toll from COVID-19 has neared 40,000 after 1,274 people died in the past 24 hours. Mexico has reported 708 fatalities overnight, taking the tally to over 15,000. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the countrywide death toll has reached nearly 113,000. Worldwide, the death count has crossed 416,000, while infections are over 7.3 million. Further details in this report.
As President Donald Trump pushes to reopen all sectors of the economy, experts say the U.S. may see 200,000 deaths from COVID-19 by September. Meanwhile, the Pan Health American organization has warned that June will be a crucial month for Latin America, where death count has crossed 70,000. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum says the capital will embark on a large-scale testing effort as the centerpiece of its plan to reopen its economy. But in Brazil, Sao Paulo Mayor Bruno Covas said he has decided to allow street shops and real estate brokers to open on restricted hours.
The city is still under quarantine. I hope that soon we can celebrate having defeated the virus. But now with the rates, it is possible to start the opening, but the fight continues.
Europe is set to reopen its border as the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development warns the Eurozone's GDP is expected to plunge 11.5%. Austria too will partially open up its borders beginning on June 16th, while Greece will allow tourists to fly to Athens from June 15th. Meanwhile, France has announced to end special government powers brought in to deal with the pandemic on July 10th.
We see well that today's health conditions are extremely different from what we have lived through in March or even from May 11. It's these health conditions that have evolved that have led the government today to announce the end of the state of health emergency.
In Asia, Thailand has reported no new coronavirus infections or deaths in the past 24 hours. It is the first time in nearly 3 weeks that no new cases were reported and the 17th day without local transmission.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has recorded its highest single-day surge in COVID-19 cases as nearly 6,000 people tested positive, increasing the tally to over 119,000. The health ministry says 101 people died due to the virus in the past 24 hours, raising the toll to 2,356. The ministry said over 38,000 patients of coronavirus have recovered so far. It said the province of Punjab has reported over 45,000 cases so far, while Sindh has nearly 44,000 cases. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has over 15,000 cases now, and Balochistan has 7,335. The capital city, Islamabad, has reported 6,236 cases, while Gilgit-Baltistan and AJK have reported over 1,500 cases. The UN says more than 70 civilians have been killed and several others wounded in a raid in Nigeria's northeastern Borno state. In a report, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said the motorized armed group also stole a herd of more than 1,000 cattle in the Gaboyo area. The report said gunmen targeted the funeral for the victims and also set their houses ablaze. The office said local hunters were deployed to protect the town with the military support in response to persistent violence by armed groups. It said the latest attacks are the deadliest in Borno state since July 2019. No group has claimed responsibility for the bloodshed, but militant groups of Boko Haram and ISIS are active in the region. The UN says Libya's warring sides are fully engaged in military talks aimed at ending the fighting in the country. The UN mission in Libya called the virtual meeting of Joint Military Commission productive. The mission said it held a meeting with Eastern Army on June 3rd as well as one with the Libyan government delegation on Tuesday. It said they discussed the draft ceasefire agreement presented by the mission to the parties in February. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has welcomed the resumptions of talks between the UN and Libyan parties. In a press conference in Washington, Pompeo urged speedy negotiations to achieve a ceasefire. He said the quick and good faith talks are now required to implement a truce. A Katyusha rocket has landed inside Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone. Witnesses say they heard a loud blast followed by sirens from the U.S. embassy in the zone. The rocket was reportedly launched from nearby Al-Shab International Stadium in Baghdad. A military statement confirmed the attack. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack yet. The rocket attack comes ahead of strategic dialogue between the U.S. and Iraq scheduled to begin today. U.S. Undersecretary David Hale will lead the discussion with the representatives from the Department of Defense, Treasury, Energy, and other agencies. Pakistan calls for the establishment of an independent Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders with Jerusalem as its capital. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the nature of freedom struggles in Palestine and Kashmir are very similar. Qureshi represented Pakistan at the emergency virtual meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Earlier, the bloc said it rejects all policies aimed at changing the legal status of the Palestinian territory. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan called on the international community to take a strict stance against Israeli aggression. OIC Secretary General Yusuf Al-Uthaymeen rejected Israeli policies, saying they violate relevant UN resolutions. He said any illegal change to the Palestinian lands threatens the two-state solution. Now, the U.S. has criticized India's annexation of occupied Kashmir, the Racist Citizenship Amendment Act, and the National Register of Citizens. In its annual International Religious Freedom Report, the State Department said Indian lawmakers denied issues of religious-inspired mob violence, lynching, and communal violence. The report said New Delhi deployed police, imposed a curfew, and cut internet service in the valley. It said ruling Bharatiya Janata Party officials incited violence against minorities, leading to major human rights abuse. The report highlighted incidents of cow vigilantism and other types of mob violence, such as the attack last year on Tambrez Asari in Jharkhand. It also took note of the Babri Masjid decision by the Supreme Court. In April, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom recommended downgrading India to the lowest grade. In another news, the Taliban have released another 8 soldiers and policemen of the Kabul administration from prison in Zabul province. The two sides have expedited the prison swap agreed under Doha deal to pave way for the intra-Afghan dialogue. In a tweet, Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said the prisoners were sent to their families after giving them new clothes and transportation fare. U.S. Special Representative Zalmi Khalilzad recently visited Qatar, Pakistan, and Afghanistan and held important meetings to set the stage for intra-Afghan dialogue. Afghan Chief of High Council for National Reconciliation, Abdullah, also said Qatar is expected to host the talks soon. Largely peaceful demonstrations continue across dozens of U.S. cities on the 16th consecutive day in the aftermath of George Floyd's custodial death. One individual was injured in Virginia as protesters pulled down a Confederate monument in Portsmouth. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called for removal of 11 Confederate statues from the Capitol as Floyd's brother testified in the Congress. But President Donald Trump says he will not even consider renaming military bases named for Confederate generals. Meanwhile, over in Minnesota, a statue of the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus was beheaded while protesters in Washington, Boston, and New York called for defunding the police. The New York City Detectives Union says it will sue demonstrators who attacked cops. The White House says it will present a police reform proposal in coming days, but ruled out reducing immunity for cops.
One thing that AG Barr said was that in the Democrat bill, they talked about needing to reduce immunity to go after bad cops, but that would result in police pulling back. So that is one thing that is a non-starter.
So is that, it's called qualified immunity. Yes. Is that a red line for the president?
That's a non-starter in the Democrat legislation. Yes, John.
Swedish prosecutors have named the suspect who they killed, former Prime Minister Olof Palme, in 1986, ending years of mystery. At a press conference, Chief Prosecutor Christer Pettersson said they are closing the investigation into Palme's death. He said Stig Engström killed himself in 2000 and charges cannot be brought against a dead person. Police started investigating the Skandia man as a possible suspect in 2017. Palme was shot in the back as he walked home from the cinema with his wife in Stockholm. The World Health Organization says it hopes to work side by side with the US to contain DR Congo's Ebola outbreak. Earlier, Washington said it will end the relationship with the UN agency due to its handling of the coronavirus pandemic. In a press briefing, WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus said they discussed the issue with US Secretary of Health Alex Azar last week. However, he said it does not mean the body is receiving money directly from the country, which has been its top donor. Tedros said the relationship with the US is more important than money. On Monday, the WHO said 12 people have been infected with Ebola in a new outbreak of the disease in the DR Congo. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. In Pakistan, the economic crunch caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has left thousands of daily wages without jobs. Now, the government is hiring them to plant billions of trees across the country in a new initiative fighting both the climate and unemployment crisis. Let's find out more about this initiative in this report.
Pakistan's government is using its tree plantation program to fill the economic void created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thousands of out-of-work laborers have been hired as jungle workers. The wages are modest but crucial for their survival.
In Pakistan, as well as in the entire world, all factories, shops and other businesses were closed because of the coronavirus. People like me have no other means of livelihood except manual labor. Therefore, while we are strictly following all precautionary measures, many of us laborers have started working here in the tree plantation nursery of the Muhammad Forest Department. The Forest Department pays us our wages on time, which is enabling many poor laborers to support their families very well.
The authorities are making sure all anti-coronavirus SOPs are being followed. Workers have been provided with masks, gloves and sanitizers.
These people working here are all very poor people. The Forest Department has briefed us about the coronavirus. They have given us complete instructions about safety. They have given us masks, gloves, antiseptic and whatever else we need. So we are continuing this work on this project of the Forest Department, and God willing, we will complete it.
Mohammad Taimasip, director of the 10 billion tree tsunami project, says the work includes setting up nurseries, planting saplings, and serving as forest protection guards.
Starting from March until June, around 20,000 of these jobless laborers have been employed by us on a daily basis and are being paid per day. We have employed around 20,000 in our province. We are hopeful that when our new year starts from July, we will be able to increase the labor at least up to 50,000 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province alone.
According to the World Wildlife Fund, forested areas account for less than 6% of Pakistan's territory.
In Belgium, as coronavirus lockdowns disrupt food supply chain, local farmers face another crisis: drought. The water level fell down and authorities have banned water pumping from river. Farmers are now waiting for rain. Further details in this report.
Climate change is altering the weather pattern on the planet Earth. Parts of Belgium are facing drought for 4 consecutive years. The country is facing its driest summer since the 19th century, with conditions that have stunted crop growth. The situation has added misery to the woes of farmers.
The corn should be at least 20 centimeters tall now. But what we see is an arid plant of about 10 centimeters that should definitely get water in the next 10 days. As a matter of fact, I already gave the plants 25 to 30 liters of water per square meter last week. But since this week we are not allowed to water anymore, the water level in rivers is so low that we are not allowed to pump any more water.
The West Flanders Governor Karl Decker-Loew has banned water pumping from the streams after the levels fell below 2.9 meters. Decker-Loew adds that prolonged drought could cost the region millions of euros.
We haven't seen such low water levels in 30 years, and we are also experiencing the driest weeks in 120 years. So we are in a situation that is not good.
After the fall of water levels, farmers cannot pump water into fields. Now rain is the only hope for them. Experts says climate change is exacerbating the altering conditions. It could be rainfall for weeks or a drought for a similar time period.
The jet stream is less active due to global warming because the temperature contrast between the North Pole and more southern regions in the northern half of the world is less. And that means the jet stream is less active and starts to curve more often. Then when the contrast of temperatures is big, then you have a straight line with some variable weather, which we lack now.
There is above average temperatures and low rainfall in Western and Central Europe. After this dreadful situation, the European Union has cut its yield forecast for almost all the crops.
In the United Kingdom, activists have drawn up a hit list of 60 monuments in the country that celebrate slavery and racism. They suggested it was up to local communities to decide what statues they want in their areas. Let's find out more in this report.
A wave of anti-racism protests sweeping across the United States and Europe has reignited a debate about monuments glorifying Britain's imperialistic past. Thousands defied social distancing rules to gather at Oxford University and demand the removal of a statue of 19th century British colonialist Cecil Rhodes.
Rhodes represents such a violent legacy of colonialism, imperialism, slavery, particularly in Southern Africa. And the values that he represents are not the values that we stand by and not the values that we think should be celebrated in this community in Oxford. And so, the beginning is to take down a statue that celebrates that so that we can continue to decolonize the university.
Meanwhile, in Leeds, a statue of Queen Victoria has been sprayed with graffiti, including the words murderer and slave owner. The bronze sculpture on Woodhouse Moor in the Hyde Park area of the city also had the words colonizer and racist daubed on it. Meanwhile, a statue of 18th century British slave owner Robert Milligan was removed from outside the Museum of London Docklands. The action followed a decision by Mayor Sadiq Khan to review London's landmarks to reflect the city's diversity.
So this is our contribution from the East End to show solidarity to our brother George Floyd, who was brutally killed in the US, and the movement that's happening throughout the world with Black Lives Matter. East End has a history of standing up against injustice and inequality. And this is our mark by removing a slaver, Robert Milligan, who used to own 526 slaves when he died in 1809.
On Sunday, the statue of slave trader Edward Colston was torn down and thrown into the harbor by protesters in Bristol.
Asian stock markets are trading lower after U.S. Federal Reserve warns the country's economy faces a long road to recovery. Investor sentiments have dampened as FED also announced to keep interest rates near zero for the foreseeable future. Nikkei 225 has lost over 2.5%. Seoul's Kospi is trading nearly 2% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has lost over 1.5%. Shanghai Composite is trading over 0.5% lower. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price has lost 3.5%. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.